In the midst of the ongoing crisis with Russia and Ukraine, I just came across what I would call a gem, a really awesome gem. It's a couple of clips that I'm going to play of Joe Biden from 1997 speaking on C-SPAN. There are two specific clips. One clip is around him saying what would provoke a quote-unquote vigorous and hostile reaction from Russia in regards to NATO. And the other one is talking about them turning to China. This is so incredibly damning. I'm just going to let the videos speak for themselves.
I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission, having nothing to do with the merit and preparedness of the country to come in, would be to admit the Baltic states now in terms of NATO-Russian, U.S.-Russian relations. And if there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction, I don't mean military, in Russia, it would be that. So the way I look at the calculus here, our conversation with Zaganov was repeated with Lebed. They talked about they don't want this NATO expansion, they know it's not in their security interests, and on, and said, well, and if you do that, we may have to look to China. And I couldn't help using the colloquial expression from my state by saying to Zaganov, lots of luck in your senior year. Good luck. And if that doesn't work, try Iran. I'm serious. I said that to them, and these were, and they know, I knew, they knew, everybody knows that that is not an option. And everybody knows, every one of those leaders acknowledges and needs, and they resent it. But they need to look west. And the question is, well, this is designed to completely shut them out, but not in.
Wow. I mean, words can't describe how damning those two videos are. Somebody close to Biden should just take him, sit him down, and allow him to watch that entire little speech that he gave and get his perspective now. Because, I mean, Jesus Christ, what hypocritical statements did those prove to truly be? But I guess I'll start by trying to address the Baltic state remarks. So Biden says there that the only thing that could provoke, he says, a vigorous and hostile Russian response would be if NATO expanded as far as the Baltic states. Guess what? Can you guess what I'm about to say? NATO expanded to the Baltic states. I mean, I don't know what to say. So NATO has expanded to what we call the Baltic states. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, all three countries are members of NATO. So I guess this is that hostile, vigorous Russian response he warned of if we were to expand to the Baltic states. I mean, look, man, the part that I hate the most about this is that this kind of history, it doesn't, not a lot of people know about this. They're not being told the actual history of this on mainstream media, on MSNBC, Fox News, and all the rest of them who want to lead us into a new Cold War. You know, Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, got verbal agreement from Bush Sr. that NATO would not expand one step to the east. Now, let's remember, NATO was a hostile military alliance designed to, quote unquote, counter communism, to counter the Russian caravan, so to speak. Well, the Soviet Union fell in the early 1990s. What was the reason for NATO? Well, we were told that NATO was what I just previously outlined, but then they changed their goals. Then it was to secure the new technologies, sea lanes, pipelines, natural energy resources, and all the rest of it. And one could easily surmise that NATO is just a hegemonic force to further the power of the U.S. government, which heads NATO. And so they continue to expand and expand and expand, ignoring previous promises that were made that weren't worth anything, of course, because they weren't on any kind of paper. It wasn't any real declaration. And they continued this encirclement of Russia, and now we are where we are. And that history today is largely lost. This looks like some kind of unprovoked attack on the Ukraine by Russia and Vladimir Putin, when in fact there is a very, very deep history in which NATO, every step of the way, played a very major part in allowing all of this to occur. And now I want to turn to the other statements, which might be even more damning. When he was referring to Mr. Zeganov there, he's referring to a character by the name of Gennady Zyuganov. He's a Russian politician. And he was saying, basically he was telling Biden, we're going to have to turn to China if NATO keeps expanding and you guys keep ignoring our wishes. And Biden goes extremely arrogantly, well, good luck with that. Good luck with that. And if China doesn't work out, maybe you can turn to Iran. Now, this is absolutely amazing because he says in that video that I just played, turning to China isn't an option, he says. They need to look west, he says. Well, obviously, all of that was proven wrong. All of that got pissed on because what's happening right now, Russia is in fact turning to China. China and Russia are the closest today than they've ever been. That's not particularly good for the West, for America specifically, is it? During this ongoing crisis with Ukraine and Russia, China has stood firm in their relations with Russia. They have reassured Russia that they are in fact still friends and all the rest of it. And you can expect China to help Russia through their quote unquote tough times, although not really tough, with these sanctions that's being thrown at them from the West and primarily from the United States. But I mean, how amazing is that? Those remarks that he had to say back then come back to be proven to be completely false, and we can make fun of him for it. And the thing that I like the most about this is the fact that these people, Joe Biden and people like him, they're supposed to be the smartest people, right? Aren't they? These are supposed to be the people that are all knowing, that lead the country, that never lead us astray, that never make mistakes. I mean, that couldn't be anything further from the truth, isn't it? I mean, these remarks, as I said before, so incredibly damning. And I also came across, and this is, of course, history that is lost, an article from The Guardian that details how Vladimir Putin suggested that he would have liked to join the NATO alliance early in his rule. So ex-NATO head George Robertson, a former Labor Defense Secretary who led NATO between 1999 and 2003, said that Putin made it clear at their first meeting that he wanted Russia to be a part of Western Europe. And I quote, they wanted to be a part of that secure, stable, prosperous West that Russia was out of at the time. And of course, it goes without saying that the West botched that, as they botched pretty much everything else. And it led up to the events that we are today, of course, with Putin and his regime losing trust and, the events that transpired leading up until today. And there's a quote that I heard a while back that kind of puts into perspective a pretty decent way I look at to describe this entire situation. And the quote is, the old order is dying and a new order has not yet risen. And that new order may very well be Russia and China.